Look at Dad, I got a firefly!
Alright, hey everybody, in this video we're going to be looking at how you can make this a firefly or just a general bug catcher and customize it to meet your little kiddos' needs. It's a really fun family project and activity. Can be done together or obviously by yourself. It doesn't have to be just for fireflies. You can put dragonflies or really anything that you can put in that hole there and that'll come back out. This is what we were using prior to making this project. You saw a firefly there, and this is way better and just takes a couple of hours tops to make. So first things first, let's get started. You're going to need a template. Cut out a piece of paper and fold it in half to get it symmetrical, and then you'll take the paper and trace around it. In other words, you need something like this, and then you're going to superimpose that and trace around a piece of wood. Now this is going to be the side of the bug catcher, and you're going to use a little jigsaw and you're going to cut around that. So I'm using a 1-inch thick piece of pine. Obviously you have your choice. You can do obviously whatever you want. Whatever kind of wood is durable, and obviously if you're going to be putting this out in the rain, you want it to be weather resistant if you're not going to be painting or staining it. So we'll go ahead and get this cut. You can see I use my jigsaw around the curved edges and my miter saw to make the straight cuts. Once your first side is cut, you can use it as a template and you can trace around it to make your second side so that the two sides are indeed symmetrical with one another. And we'll go ahead and put that on there and get that cut out with our jigsaw. Jigsaw is on the curved feature, so it can make those corners pretty well. Now I can use a belt sander or really any sander to just kind of trim up those edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be concealing these kind of ugly edges anyway. You just want them to be generally symmetrical with one another. Now we're going to be making the bottom, so we'll fit the two sides on like this, make a small mark here, and that's going to be the exact width of the bottom. And you can adjust that further outward or inward depending on your ideal size. Make a small mark there, and using a straight edge we'll connect those two lines just so we have a nice 90-degree cut. And we'll do that both ways, and we'll make our cuts on a miter saw. And I'm going to also turn it sideways and do this cut this way. This might not work for you. Be really careful. You might need to get a circular saw out. The edges are incredibly sharp once you're done with the cut, so I'm just going to sand them down a little bit. Next up, I have this handy little tool. If you've never seen this before, it is basically a drill bit that allows you to make a sizable hole. You have the option of making whatever size hole that you want to. I'm doing a good 1.5 or 2-inch. What is that? I can't tell. But it's the biggest hole fitting that I have, drill bit that I have. I want, for example, a dragonfly to fit in there without having to stuff them in, right? This drill bit's really easy to assemble. It's got a little nut on there you can see that attaches the saw part to the drill bit part. So it tightens up and it basically fits in the end of your drill like this, and allows you to drill a sizable hole in a piece of wood. And the teeth on there are really sharp, so it's not going to have any problem penetrating that pine. Alright, here I'm making a small mark just to let me know how far down I don't want the bottom of the hole to be. In other words, I want to have enough clearance for the door once I assemble this thing. So I'll put this piece of wood in my vise and I'll go ahead and drill out the hole like this. Alright, so with that out, we're going to set that aside. You might choose to use that later as the door itself, kind of a plug approach if you want to, but we're going to make a clear door with plexiglass for this. But anyway, I'm pretty happy with that door. The opening there, it came out well. And now of course I'm going to sand it down, get rid of all those jagged edges, and I'm going to put a layer of stain on everything. I'm using a stain and a polyurethane in one. I don't have time. This is not a perfect job that I'm trying to do here, so I just need it to be stained and sealed in one go. All right, now that that's dry, I'm going to take a little bit of wood glue and time to put the sides up against the floor of the bug catcher like this. Just a bead of wood glue will be fine. We just want it to adhere uniformly, and obviously you can put screws in the other side. I have an air gun with little brad nails. If you don't have one of these, I really recommend getting this. It helps with trim projects around the house, little things like this. You could do it with one hand, so to speak, and they're really secure and strong. And I'm going to put a link in the description below, by the way, for some tools for this project. If you don't have any of these tools and you want to get yourself some, I think that would be just generally a good thing to have around the house if you don't already. Next up, we'll take the screen. Now, I happen to have some leftover screen from our screened-in porch. You can really use any screen that you want. The wire metal screen will maybe dent on you and might not look as good. So I'm using some mesh screen here, and it's pretty durable stuff. And I'm just going to align it like you just saw there and just kind of wrap it over. I just need a general place to cut, and I'm going to obviously make it a little bit longer versus shorter, so if I make a mistake, I can just trim some off as opposed to having to recut an entire sheet. So I can just kind of fold that over, and at this point you'd have a variety of options. You could use glue, super glue, fast drying, of course, so you're not standing there holding it, or you could use a stapler. So I have a stapler right there, a heavy-duty stapler, but the glue approach would kind of look something like this. You would apply some liberal amounts starting with one end. Let that dry really well because you're going to want to pull tightly, and that needs to be anchored, okay? If it's not anchored, it's going to slip on you and you're going to have to do that again. But I'm doing the stapler. It's a little more sturdy and I don't have to wait as long. Now the staple did not penetrate the wood on one go, so I'll just take a little hammer there and tap it in the rest of the way, which I like because if I make a mistake, I can pull out the staple and do it again before I hammer it in. All right, so I'll wrap it around the other side now, and kind of the same idea. Let me get that in focus for you a little bit. There we go. And we will secure the other end with a staple and just kind of pound that in. Don't worry too much about aesthetics at this point. We're going to put some trim on here and get rid of these edges of the screen. All right, now pulling it tight is pretty important. You don't want it to sag at all. Now it might a little bit. You might have some imperfections in your screen. I didn't get it perfect, but I felt like it was about 95% and felt pretty good about it. But anyway, we'll continue to pull that tight. And we're going to continue to put staples around the perimeter. And then we'll just, for the sake of diversity here, we'll put some super glue on so I don't have to spend more time stapling. Next, we'll take a razor blade and cut the screen down to size. Notice kind of the length of the screen there. I do have a pretty straight line cut, so I was very pleased with that. If it's not straight, it's not the end of the world. All right, this is that plug piece that I was telling you earlier. If you wanted to make a plug for the door, you could do that at this point. Depending on how you cut that, it's going to be a perfect fit, or it might be a little loose. So you can build that up, putting a layer of caulking around it or something for a little extra snugger fit. And then you could adhere a string. Another option would be to use the little plug as a template for plexiglass door, which will be showing you a little bit. I'm going to actually make a different type of door, a heart-shaped door. But anyway, I've got this little Dremel tool here with a metal cutter, a little fiberglass piece on there that's super strong. If you try to cut this plexiglass, at least this stuff that I have, it actually shatters pretty easily. So I found that using this drill bit or this Dremel bit kind of almost melts that plexiglass away. Now, I do encourage you to make that. We did the perimeter there, the exact size of the plug. You want to make that a little bigger. In fact, by 1/4 of an inch on every side. This piece right here is not big enough to fit around the opening of the door, so there'll be gaps around it if you use the exact size of that plug as the template. So use the plug as a template, but then measure outward about 1/4 of an inch all the way around to make that door cover the opening. The edges just kind of, chip off like that and smooth out really well. Now I actually have a cookie cutter from inside the house here, and I'm going to use that as a template to make a heart-shaped door. Obviously, I've measured this, so I know it's going to fit around the hole that I cut out for the door, so that's not going to be a problem. So I'm just going to do this and use this as my door. My daughter was super pumped about this, a heart-shaped door. How cool is that? So we'll go ahead and get that cut out very carefully, and the edges just kind of flake away. And you can even get a sander on your Dremel and sand that out a little bit more. And I'm going to have to do that, so I'll be doing that in a second. But this is just to kind of show you how simple this is. And you can pick up a piece of plexiglass like this at your local hardware store. Again, I'll put a link in the description below for just a 8x10 sheet or something that you could use as an option. All right, so we'll go ahead and get this glued down. Now you could leave the plexiglass heart as is, but I'm actually liking this piece because my plexiglass cut doesn't have to be perfect. I can just hide those ugly edges and corners like this. Okay, so this is generally how that's going to look. Now I'm going to put a little hole right here. You see the little black magic marker, a hole. That's going to be my anchor point for the screw. This will be the sliding door. And obviously you want the screw to not penetrate all the way through that piece of wood, the side there of your bug catcher. This is the sandpaper edge, or the sandpaper bit on my Dremel tool, and I will use that to sand out the edges to make them flush against that cookie cutter, if that makes sense. If it's not flush, I just want to kind of hide that. All right, here's a terrible shot, sorry about that, of me pre-drilling the hole in the plexiglass. This plexiglass does shatter, so be really careful when you drill. I have it secured to a hard back there, or it's not secured, but it's resting on a hard back, and then it goes through pretty easily like that. And that hole needs to be pretty much the same width, if not wider, than the nail or the screw that's going to be going through there. Next, we'll take our screw and we will actually secure the door to the side, as you can see here. You can adjust the tension of the sliding door, making it really tight to open or quite liberal or free, however you want to do that there. All right, moving on here. You could potentially use anything for trim here. For example, you could use a piece of rope. That'd have to be a little thicker than this because you want to cover the staple and cover that edge. But we'll get to that here in just a second. For now, we're going to take some little eye bolt hooks and we're going to put them on. You could put them on the top or the sides. I prefer the sides here, so I will screw those, 2 of them in the side. One here, and then of course one on the other side, and we'll tighten that up with a pair of pliers, get those nice and seated deeply there. Yep, that's probably good. And next we'll take some rope, and this will be the little handle. Slide the rope through the little eye bolt opening. Might be kind of tough. There we go. And you'll adjust it however long you want the handle to be. And I'm going to tie a knot in it. Just one time over will definitely do the trick, so it won't slide out there. So I want the handle to be about this long. I think that'll be fine. All right, so I'll tie another knot right there, and that will, of course, secure it really well. We'll cut off the ends, and you might want to actually burn the edges a little bit, just a little bit, singe those up so that they don't fray on you. Obviously, be really careful when doing this, and that rope, once heat is applied, will be incredibly hot, so don't touch it with your bare hands. Give it a minute to cool, and here you go. So now all we have left is to deal with that trim piece. Now obviously you could put the trim on before the handle there, no problem. However you'd like to do that. The door slides downward, so we're almost done. There we go. Perfect. Well, mostly perfect. Okay, so let's take this in and we'll put some trim on it. I mentioned earlier you could use rope or obviously there's a piece of ribbon here you could use. We headed down into our gift wrapping little area of our home and raided all the ribbon that we could find. So we happen to have some Minnie Mouse ribbon, which was awesome. And then we'll use some kind of lemon lime colored ribbon for the other side. That way both my kids can use this and they both feel like it. I have a boy and a girl, so we'll take a little hot glue from my hot glue gun. You could use super glue or whatever you want there. And we're going to anchor it down and then wrap it around. Again, you could hold off on doing the handle. You could do the trim first before you install the handle for it. But we're going to take some glue and wrap it, kind of put it all on the underside of that trim piece and then wrapping it pretty tightly. And you got to move quick here because that hot glue will dry quickly. And be careful, it's really hot even when you press it. So that's pretty much it. Not perfect, but a great little family fun-filled activity. And of course now we have a bug catcher. And my kids are super pumped about this.
Look at Dad, I got a firefly!
Alright, I hope you liked this video. For more do-it-yourself projects and real home product reviews, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for being with me.